Welcome to Inside Coverage, where we cover the why and how of all things in the NFL, and we have plenty of why and how to get to. He's Frank Schwab, she's Jori Epstein, I'm Jason Fitz. Jori, you have been in Florida, although I got to admit, first and foremost, I thought you'd be more golden tan. Like I just expected after time in Florida that you would look like. I'm just saying, like Frank always looks olive tanned and perfect, and I can't figure that out because he's in the middle of nowhere.
It's got to be the lighting, because no.
Okay.
You've seen me in real life. No, that's not.
That's fair. I mean, Jori, I just thought maybe you'd have a Mai Tai in hand and be ready to break things down. Little tan.
Yeah, one of the existential debates I've been having all week is, do I sit out in the beautiful sun or do I sit in the very dark hallway that I actually need to be in to catch all of my sources? The dark hallway usually won out. I did take one radio hit from outside in the courtyard, and then it was so sunny that my phone overheated and I lost service. So that's how that went. But it's definitely quite sunny down here. I know I was like talking to Chicago and I'm like, I'm so obnoxious that it's 38 degrees for you guys and I'm overheating in the sun. But yes, my allergies are in full-fledged. I think I'm allergic to every tree at the Breakers, but cannot fight the sun, the sunset. It is gorgeous down here.
I mean, Frank and I are just fighting to be your bag carrier next year. I mean, I'm up here having to pre-warm the car to go to the gym because it's still like 30 degrees and raining, and I'd give anything for it. Okay, we got a lot for the owners' meetings to get into, not just the beautiful weather, but let's start with the usual, because we're a football show. That means we have to start with the Cowboys, but also because nothing's ever easy. I just want one simple contract, one moment where we can say, hey, the Cowboys signed a superstar player early and affordably, and there's nothing to talk about. But that doesn't exist. We covered it a little bit on the show earlier this week, but we have even more developments in the direct negotiations with Micah Parsons. Let me start here, because Jerry Jones made it clear that he is directly negotiating with Micah. The quote, I spent 5-6 hours with him myself, had a lot of discussions. It's not uncommon for me to visit directly with players, and in particular it's what I'm doing. Jori, start here with me. How uncommon is this, not for the Cowboys, but for any organization, to try and deal with the star player directly and not with an agent?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, Fitz, because I was at the Breakers where Jerry was, talked to him several times this week, and was a part of this conversation when he was giving us this interview. And when he starts saying, I talked to Micah for 5 or 6 hours, I'm like, oh yeah, he's talked to Micah over the course of their time working together. No, Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons met last week for a negotiation. Micah Parsons comes into the office. I don't think he realized quite what it was going into it, but Mike is a smart guy. So when they start being like, well, no trade clause this, guarantees this, here's going to be the cash flow, here's going to be the length of the contract, they actually had a negotiation between the two of them, at which point, it's my understanding, a contract was offered before Micah left. Now, there was no deal. He did not sign it. Micah says, hey, Jerry, hey, Steven, call my agent, David Mulligetta, and I confirmed with sources on the I talked to sources on both sides of this, able to confirm a few things. One, Micah Parsons, after meeting with the Cowboys, asked them to call his agent, David Mulligetta. Two, Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones have not called David Mulligetta. Again, I believe it's been at least a week since this conversation. They did not make the call, and I confirmed that with multiple people. Three, David Mulligetta is huge in this industry. I mean, I think he was the first agent to negotiate $1 billion worth of deals in a calendar year, in a year. So he knows people in the Cowboys organizations and others. Yes, he has talked to Adam Prasivka, who's director of contracts and salary cap and all that, but they haven't actually had this negotiation over Micah Parsons' contract. And as Jerry Jones told us, no deal's getting done without him signing the checks. And so as long as Jerry and Steven will not call David Mulligetta, as Micah Parsons has asked them to do if they want to deal, this deal's not getting done anytime soon.
Just weird. It's like a Law and Order episode where they're trying to get the person to confess without the lawyer present. This is what are we doing? This is, I don't know. I just don't understand. Like Fitz talked about at the jump. Why is everything so complicated with the Cowboys? Why can't they just be call?
I think I have an answer.
Call the agent. What is it? What is it?
What is the answer?
Give me an answer.
Yeah. So I've talked to a lot of negotiators this week, and I've just been like, okay, here's what Jerry's telling us. Am I just blind and naive that this is how posturing works in business negotiations, or is this weird? And it's my understanding that generally the way other teams work is, if it's your own player that you are trying to extend, most teams do want to talk to that player, the general manager or the president or the team owner or some kind of mix. Like oftentimes you do, and you want to understand we want you, and even if your agent thinks we don't, we do, and something like that. But it's very rare that you actually exchange numbers. And I did have one general manager this week tell me, I'm not giving numbers. Now, the way that general manager did is they said, okay, you know what, I'm going to not talk numbers with you, but ultimately when I send over the deal to your agent, I'll copy you on it. It's like you understand what's going on, but I'm not trying to do it. And a lot of teams don't want to talk numbers with players because they want the football and the business side to be separate, and it's just easier for negotiations. Again, I personally don't have an agent, but I know other contemporaries in this business do. It's like you're probably not talking numbers with Yahoo, your agent's doing that for you. So the thing about Jerry, though, is that you have to realize some people say, is this disrespectful to the agent? In my opinion, Jerry Jones did veer into the disrespect world toward David Mulligetta when he said, I don't even know his name. Like, whether or not it's true, and it really might be because that's a whole other story we're not going to get a whole podcast on, why do you have to say that? Why do you have to, on camera, ESPN cameras there, 20 reporters there, why do you have to say, I don't even know his name? Like, that is not a respectful thing to say. If you don't want to talk to them, that's one thing. If you want to talk to your player because you believe it. So there's that element. But in terms of the actual structure, I think this is less about Jerry disrespecting agents and more about Jerry Jones saying, I don't believe in precedent because I don't have to. And I have not gotten where I've been as a businessman and as even an NFL team owner by saying, I'm going to do whatever the system says. I'll give you an example. Why is the NFL so lucrative today? One of the top reasons, if not the top reasons, is because of the media rights deal and how much money they're making. Well, it used to be that the NFL would pay TV companies to broadcast their games. Jerry Jones was the one who said, no, they should be paying us for these deals, and totally revolutionized the financial structure of the NFL and the media rights structure of the NFL. And that's a big reason why he is in the Hall of Fame. It's not about the Super Bowls. Yes, he won a few right at the beginning, but this is about what he's done to change what the NFL is. So the same way that Jerry did not believe just because always they had been paid to get on TV before, he does not believe that just because there is an agent, that's how I got to do it. And Jerry also is huge on relationships. He gets a lot of flack. And like any human, Jerry Jones has his flaws. And again, another podcast, not this one. But Jerry Jones is a people person at his core. And anyone who works with him will tell you he's extremely loyal. And so Jerry says, look, I don't want to talk to someone else. I know Micah. Micah's on my team. Micah's my employee. I want to talk to Micah. And I know when I wrote the book of a Holocaust survivor and we were trying to work through some of the elements and the legal elements, like Max, the survivor of blessed memory, was like, no, why do we need lawyers to each represent us? Like, you need one lawyer to get married, you need two to get divorced. And it was endearing that he said that he was in his 90s at the time. But there's this element of like, we're a family here. And I think Jerry's like, I don't want someone coming in between what I view as this family relationship. So I don't agree with all of it. I'm not saying it is normal, but I think that it's helpful to at least understand where Jerry Jones is coming from when he's doing this.
So my only pushback to that, Jori, is that I think it puts the athlete in an incredibly awkward position. And you're right. Like I have an agent in this business, full transparency. I had a booking agent and a manager in the music business. And, you know, music business 101 real quick. I know it's a football podcast, but you give 15 to 20% of your gross to a manager and to a booking agent, and each. So 30 to 40% of your dollar is gone before you've even gotten a check in the music business because these people represent you. But the reason it happens is because, you know, you might have a friend that runs an arena or a club or a venue you love, and he comes to you and he's like, man, I really want you guys to play this. You're blowing up. Do this for me. Well, you do that for him, and all of a sudden you set a dangerous precedent for everybody else that's within 200 miles because that's your booking radius. So all of a sudden, because you agreed to lower your fee to half for this friend of yours, all the other people you didn't lower the fee, now you've hurt your relationship. So as much as we talk about the music business and the fact that it's absolutely killer, what's meant to happen for some of this is to leave a bridge between friendships and awkwardness and money. So the number of times I've been in rooms with friends that run powerful tours and they've said, man, what's it going to cost to get you guys to open this tour, to be on this show? My answer was always, man, that's why we've got the insert company here. Like that at the time for us, that's why we have Red Light. Like, go talk to the management company, go talk to our booking agent, get that done. Because I don't want to have this awkward moment where I have to tell somebody, man, that's not enough, or, oh, that is enough. And then I find out it isn't enough anymore. And all of a sudden, now I look like an idiot because I'm going back. Like Micah is put into a really vulnerable position here where he might not know the full guarantees, the full legal language. These contracts are wildly complicated. He gives somebody a percentage of everything he makes to protect him. And so to me, as much as that's what Jerry's comfortable with, what he's not acknowledging is that there's a very real chance he makes Micah uncomfortable in this process because he's putting him in a situation where he's asking Micah to be an agent. And the fact is, he pays an agent. So it feels like while it protects Jerry and he says, this is the way I want to do, shouldn't Jerry at some point, the ultimate player's owner, be worried about the impact all of this has on his player?
He's trying to strike a deal. Your job when you're striking a deal is not to worry about the other side. Now, that said, I think there's multiple elements here. Micah Parsons went to this meeting. Depending on who you ask, Micah Parsons may have asked for this meeting. As Jerry Jones kept telling us, he's one of 3 people who has Jerry Jones' personal cell phone number. I did end up following up after to ask. It sounds like the other 2 are not players, but that's a whole other element. Yes, so Micah went to this meeting. And I do think that Micah didn't stop Jerry when he started negotiating because Micah was like, oh, yeah, like I like learning about this. I'm going to try and do this on my own. Now, ultimately, Micah didn't take the deal and he said, call my agent. But I think part of this is on Micah and then part of this is on Jerry because the initial meeting didn't seem to be under the guise of reaching a final deal. It seemed to be under the guise of discussing an extension, which is a difference. And Jerry Jones, I would say historically, has talked to all of these players, DeMarcus Lawrence, Dak Prescott. I mean, he pulled Dak out of practice, not out of practice. He caught him on his way out of practice the day before they got the deal done this past year. The unusual part of this is not that Jerry tried to talk to the player. It's that they're not calling the agent. Why aren't you calling the agent? When you were negotiating Dak's, and I said this because Jerry was like, we've talked through everything. We've talked through all of the elements. And I said, well, Jerry, have you talked to the agent about these elements or did you talk to Micah? And he said, I talked to Micah. And I said, well, is this different than the way you negotiated other contracts like Dak's? And in Jerry's mind, no, it's not different because he talked to the player then. I will say, again, to give Jerry a little bit of fairness, Jerry's job usually is to talk to the player. He's not the primary negotiator with an agent at this stage in his life. That's Stephen Jones. That's, Will McClay has an element, but it's really their cap and contracts guy, Todd Williams in their office, Adam Prasika. So they have a group that does that, which also, again, if you want to give Jerry grace, which most people don't, so sorry that I'm playing this unpopular opinion.
No, I like this.
Jerry doesn't know a lot of the agent names because it's not currently his job to know the agent names. To me, the issue is not that he doesn't know the names. It's, okay, then why don't you just give the people who are doing the general manager job the title of general manager? That's where I think we should hold him responsible. But Jerry's job at this stage in his career is not to work out the nitty gritty. It's to ultimately get the vision for it and the big picture strategy.
I just wonder, the Micah part of this is interesting too. I mean, if he wants to be a part of this and learn about it, I mean, look, Lamar Jackson,
right?
I mean, he didn't have an agent. Certainly. I mean, there's a lot of player empowerment here, and I respect that a lot. But also, if you do have an agent, we're talking about Micah Parsons, like he's some victim here a little bit, like, oh, he's so vulnerable.
No, he made a decision.
Micah Parsons is a smart dude. At any point in the 6-hour meeting, he could have said, you know what? I'm not speaking anymore about this without my agent present, going back to the Law and Order example here, because it also almost seems like there's a waste of time because at some point, whatever Jerry and Micah talked about, you go to the agent and here's the guaranteed numbers and all this kind of stuff. He's going to say, no, we're not doing that. Like they just got to start over. So, but I just find it is very, very interesting. This whole idea that Micah wants to be a big part of this, learn about it, whatever it is. Yeah, he's no victim here. He's a smart dude and he could go in this with eyes wide open and understand what he's doing. But the whole process is interesting. Now, Joy, can I ask you something? Because Jerry had a really interesting quote that I don't know what to make of. And he said basically it's not urgent. And because the Cowboys wait on everything, right? And he said, I'd rather pay more and get it right. Like, what does he mean by that exactly?
Yeah.
Like, I think that was a weird quote to me because I don't know really how to unravel that to make it make sense.
Yeah, let's take this in 2 steps. The first, why is it not urgent? When the Cowboys were trying to work out a deal with Dak Prescott just before the season, they knew if they didn't have Dak Prescott under contract come the spring, Dak could go wherever he wanted for however much he wanted. He had a no trade clause, no tag clause. They couldn't extend him anymore. They did not have his rights going forward. I'm not trying to say that Dak Prescott is better at his position than Micah Parsons is at his. They're in different elements of their career right now. But from a purely leverage standpoint, Dak Prescott had a lot of leverage of where he could play football next year. Micah Parsons contractually does not have that leverage. Micah Parsons has one more year left on his existing deal, which is the 5th-year option the Cowboys picked up, and then the Cowboys could franchise tag him up to 2 times. Now, could that get expensive? Yes, but contractually, without the Cowboys' permission, Micah Parsons cannot play for another team for the next 3 years, and the Cowboys recognize that. So when Jerry says this is not urgent, he says, I'm not at risk of losing this player. Jerry also has a whole thing of, why is everyone getting worked up about the fact that I don't have a contract when no one respects the contracts anyways, which from Jerry's perspective, again, I think it's Jerry being Jerry. He's like, all these players come to me and want to hold out when they still have a year left on their deal. Well, don't we have a contract that you're playing for another year? Which is a fair point. It's not necessarily representative of the market and the leverage that players increasingly have.
It's only fair Jerry's never cut a player with money left on his contract. That I hate that. I hate that whole
That's fair.
Why doesn't he honor the contract? Well, how often do
isn't Jerry's responsibility if he cuts a player is to give them the money left on the contract, which you do if you cut the player? Like when Tony Romo wasn't playing for the Cowboys anymore, they were still paying him for years. But yes, anyway, so that's Jerry's whole thing. So that's from an urgency standpoint, it's because the Cowboys retain Micah Parsons' right for the next 3 years. In terms of I'd rather be right than be first, this is not unique to the Cowboys, that perspective. There are teams in the league. I would say the Philadelphia Eagles are the king of this. I mean, even getting like the Max Crosby deal done now, when technically there was time to do it, some of these teams will say, oh, I know the agent wants to be able to set some sort of record. So if I tell Saquon Barkley, you can make $20 million a year, but really you're making it on the last 2 years of your contract and you have 2 others, then the average annual on the remaining money is not actually 20, it's just the new money. So the more years you have left, the more you can kind of like let everybody win. On the other hand, I have talked to the top negotiator at another team before who has told me, I'd rather be certain. I mean, they were telling me this in light of the Dak contract. I don't want to pay all this money and then regret either because the player gets injured or because the player does something off the field or because the player ages and then just had a lot of wear and tear on their body. I don't want to do it too early. So, I mean, you could say the Cowboys have not made a deep run with Micah Parsons. And so maybe he wants to be sure that they feel like they can. And Micah Parsons' playoff performance has not been the same as his regular season performance. He has not risen to the occasion thus far in the playoffs. I'm not saying he can't. And a lot of people don't do it for a while and then they do. So again, I also think there's this element of Jerry Jones talks about Micah Parsons as a leader and how leadership is one of the areas that he wants him to grow in if he's going to make that type of money. Now, there are teams who have just decided my guy's not going to be a traditional leader, but he's so talented on the field that if I want him, I need to pay him and I want him. But I do think that is an area where the Cowboys are interested to see how Micah Parsons could evolve.
All right, so let's move from one pass rusher to another because Trey Hendrickson is also in the news, and he seems to be disappointed. The Bengals came out, I think, pretty bluntly. Katie Blackburn, the Bengals executive vice president, this is her quote, I think he should be happy at certain rates that maybe he doesn't think he'd be happy at. I think some of it is on him to be happy at some point. And if he's not, that's what holds it up sometimes. So, it takes him to say yes to something. And also, we have all the respect in the world for him. He made it clear on Pat McAfee's show that he didn't like that. He didn't like the tone. He hasn't liked the communication. Jori, what are we supposed to make of all of this with Trey?
Yeah, I'm not surprised he doesn't like the tone. I don't think what they're saying is that crazy. I think it was just a choice to say it publicly. I'm sure this is things they've told Trey and or his agent in direct meetings, and I'm sure these are things they're talking about as a team. I think when you have to look at it, you say, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson. Those were the 3 big potential contract extensions the Bengals had this year. Most people around the league thought they would go for 2. And as I've talked about before, there was a belief around the league that the passing game is the X factor for the Cincinnati Bengals. And the part where last season they said, we can be better than everyone at this, and let's try and win games by being so much better than everyone at this in a league that is designed to have parity. Undoubtedly, Trey Hendrickson is a great player, and he had 1 billion sacks last year. I think it was 17 and a half, led the league, and he is super intent on the pass rush. most people around the league I've talked to do not feel like his overall defensive performance, including stopping the run, are exactly in line with his pass rush numbers and particularly his sack numbers. So the Bengals have to say, okay, if he's a pass rusher, but we're going to pay him X money, are we going to be able to fill the defense around him and be able to get the run stoppers and be able to account for all of those other things if we pay him? That's a conversation you have to have. I'm not saying it's a bad decision to sign him, and I still do kind of believe in the Philadelphia Howie Roseman philosophy of all this money that they're trying to save. Well, the salary cap is growing and growing and growing, and it's probably going to go even more when they add the 18th regular season game and they add the additional international games and get the new media rights deal. But you still currently are working with the salary cap. So I think the Bengals are saying, we want Trey Hendrickson at a certain price. And if he wants to be here at that price, great. But if not, I think, didn't they give him permission to seek a trade? Like, go find that somewhere else. And again, we have to remember, the Baltimore Ravens told Lamar Jackson, if you think you can get a fully guaranteed deal, go get one somewhere else. And he did not get it. So, and Lamar's a two-time MVP. I mean, he wasn't two-time at that point. Trey Hendrickson is not
against him, but that's okay. I'll go jump back on that hill.
I'm not saying
that they colluded against Lamar Jackson.
Okay, but Frank, you have to realize, did he get the deal? I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't have colluded. I'm not saying whether they did or did not collude against him. And I don't think that colluding is a good or probably legal thing to do. But he didn't get the deal. And so some of this is the same way that we're saying when teams don't want to pay guys a certain amount, well, that's the market. And so they have to realize if they want them, you got to pay the market. A player, your market is what you are worth professionally, what the market says you are worth.
Right.
And if Trey Hendrickson or Lamar Jackson can't get that deal, then it's not the Cincinnati Bengals' responsibility to give them that deal. Now, they could, but they don't have to if they want him. Like, if he wants to play and he wants the money and he doesn't get it elsewhere, then they can say, this is what we're willing to pay.
Yeah,
I'm probably going to I feel like our bosses are going to be like, oh yeah, so we're seeing this and like your negotiation. No, player first. We should all get everything. Anyway, continue.
Worth is, I hate when people are like, oh, he's not worth that after a guy signs a contract. Like, no, he is worth that because somebody decided he was worth that.
Exactly.
If there's one team that decides
but that goes both ways.
Is worth, right. If one team decides Trey Hendrickson is worth $45 million a year, that's what he's worth. If no team decides he's worth $20 million a year, that's what he's worth. So, yeah, I just think this whole situation is complicated with the Bengals. And boy, you're right. You are correct about Hendrickson maybe not being the two-way player that some of these other guys are, that they really get the $30-40 million. But I weep to think about the Bengals defense without Trey Hendrickson. It wasn't good with Trey Hendrickson having 17.5 sacks. So, but to your point, like, maybe that's their deal. Like, our defense stunk with you getting 17.5 sacks.
Exactly.
Like,
right. If you're the Bengals or if you're the Cowboys and you didn't get where you wanted to go with those players, you think about that when you're negotiating the next deal.
Yeah, and can a trade help them? I mean, get some more young talent that fits better what they want to do and all that kind of stuff. I think you were right all along in saying that 2 of the 3 were going to get done. And once the 2 got done, you're like, ooh, I don't know how they figure this out with Trey Hendrickson, who they've been kind of stringing along and not really paying him what he feels he should get. So I don't know. I don't see how this really comes to a conclusion where everybody's happy. At the end of the day, I think Trey Hendrickson's going to play for the Bengals and be pretty unhappy with his contract.
The only caveat I'll give is when we actually saw the details on the T. Higgins and the Jamar Chase contract, the guarantees and the life of how long those deals were not as prohibitive to getting Trey Hendrickson done as I initially thought they might be. So it could still happen, but I don't think they're going to make Trey feel like, oh, we need you.
That's the biggest part of this. Like, it's pretty clear that the Bengals are making the statement, hey, we want you, but we also have a market price of what we think is fair and reasonable for you. And if you don't agree with that, then go find more elsewhere. It feels like they are challenging him to go find more elsewhere. And that's going to come to a head as we get closer and closer to the draft, right? Like that, it feels like if you're going to move him, you don't move him in June. You move him before the draft so you can get something immediate to start to rebuild that defense. And so if Trey doesn't like his value, then it's going to be up to Trey's team to find more somewhere. And if they don't, then that's not the Bengals' fault. Like, so I think Cincinnati's actually playing this in a very smart way, in the sense that they're not undervaluing him so much to this point that somebody else has swooped in and said, hey, we'll make you king of the hill. Like, do any of us really believe that Trey's about to become the highest paid player, non-quarterback in the NFL? Because that's what it's going to take. And that's not what his value is to the Bengals, or I don't think anybody in the league.
And I will say what Trey's doing by going on Pat McAfee's show is he's not, in my opinion, swinging the Bengals' belief on what he's worth, but he is swinging public perception in an attempt to pressure them. That's the same thing Jerry Jones did this week. Jerry Jones did not change what Micah is or is not worth, but he was like, I want to be winning the public perception, and I want you to know, don't say I'm not getting this Micah deal done, because I brought Micah into my office and gave him my personal cell phone number. So I think in all of these deals, and as we report on this, there's two things to consider. What is actually happening in negotiations, and what agenda or perception do they want us to be talking about and thinking about? And hey, it worked. We've talked about both of them on the podcast today.
So by the way, Jori, so if Micah Parsons is one, and you said there's two others, so it's you and who else who has Jerry Jones?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Oh, obviously after Jerry said that, one of the reporters like, oh yeah, and what's that number? And then
did we ever find out who the other two are?
Yeah, I want to know. This is all of a sudden fascinating to me.
I would assume
Jerry
Stephen Jones is one of them.
Three people have the number. Yeah,
you would think Stephen Jones is one of them.
I would think like there's three people. Like this is I would read a 5,000
Look, when you're that age and that stage, like someone else can make calls for you.
Yeah, if only three people have that cell phone number, is that the burner phone for him or is that the real phone? So many questions about Jerry's cell phone. Okay. But we'll wrap this up real quick. Tell me this, Jori, week 1 is a contract done for Micah and for Trey.
Yes, Micah. What's Trey got one more year on his deal?
Yeah.
I say no for Trey.
Yeah, same answer. Yes for Micah, no for Trey.
Yeah, I think we all agree on this.
I don't think Micah gets done before July 20th.
Yeah, I don't think I think this is one of those, we're going to be at Cowboys training camp and Jerry can have his big press conference with Micah. We've seen this play out, and we're going to be sitting here talking about this in May and June and July. Like, is Micah going to get done? And then it's just going to be some huge show at Oxford, you know.
Yeah, until I see the Cowboys let a star walk away, I'm not going to believe a star walks away. So it always resolves itself. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Obviously, a lot going on at the owners' meetings we need to break down, including some of the rule changes, but also foolish or fool us. Some of the draft talk coming out has us wondering what's real and what's not. We'll break it down next. Owners' meetings means draft speculation is running rampant. Welcome back. And Jori, you've been down there. It's obviously a lot of conjecture right now. I think everybody's reading. I literally did a hit with a radio station in Nashville that was trying to figure out how much meaning to put behind the fact that the Titans GM and the Giants GM had coffee at the owners meeting. And that must mean that a trade is imminent from the Giants. Like, that's where we are in draft delusion at this point. So let's start with the Titans, the most forgotten first overall pick that I can remember in a long time, with Cam Ward, who were just at this point, feel like presuming he's going to go first. Brian Callahan was really effusive with the praise. And I think this is part of what has to happen. Like, Jori, tell me if I'm wrong here. I think we're seeing more and more of the Titans saying, hey, he's really good, because they're building up the fact that they're going to take this quarterback with the first overall pick. It feels like they're skipping Colorado's pro day. All of these things just lead me to continue to say Cam Ward is going to be the first overall pick in the draft.
It's so funny that you think the Titans were effusive on Cam Ward, because, like, respectfully, this is where social media and clips kind of lose the message. Yes, Brian Callahan said something nice about Cam Ward at the very beginning, and it was like fairly standard, like generic. And then the rest, he was like not willing to say where his player was, to the point that all of the Tennessee reporters, because I was at this interview, were saying, people think that because you're not willing to come out and be like, Cam Ward's our guy, that you're not excited about him or that you don't want him. What should people make about the fact that you're not more effusive? Again, remember, a year ago, the Chicago Bears were like, Caleb Williams is our guy. We're going to give him the playbook. We're not even going to all the other workouts. Like, we figured it out. Not that they're going, they obviously went to other schools to scout other players, but like Caleb was their guy. And the Titans are like, look, we're not saying that he's not our guy, and we'll be thrilled that he or someone is our guy once we pick it. But at the time they were talking, it was March 31st today, April 3rd. Like, this is not something that needs to be decided now. And the Browns were a little more honest about this, I would say, in that they said, look, of course there are guys you are circling around and you're starting to hone in on, but that's not something that we're going to make the decision now. And as generic
real quick, Jori,
yeah.
Do you believe that with the Titans? I believe the Browns maybe, because
here's what I'll tell you.
I don't think there's a surefire thing. But
do I
really
think the Titans are going to take
know?
Cam Ward? Yes. Do I think the Titans think they're going to take Cam Ward? Yes. But I'll compare this to dating. So I'm engaged right now, getting married in August.
Congratulations, Jori.
Thank you. So when Simeon and I started dating, I would say like a month into dating, I was like, I want to marry this guy. Like I understood what I was looking for. I understood what was most important to me. I had been in relationships where I was like, okay, you know, like great people, but not necessarily aligned on the priorities I care most about. And Simeon and I were. So I felt like a month in, but I didn't want to get engaged then. I didn't want to elope then because I said, you know what? I want to keep confirming this. And over the course of the following months, year, whatever, we got more and more data points. We had more conversations, more time with each other's families, more time to navigate this little health thing here, this work transition here. And I felt like the conclusion didn't change, but I was ready to move forward with that decision because I now had enough data points that I felt like I could make the best decision with the information I had, and I felt like I had enough information. And now we're getting married. Yay, so exciting. Similarly, the Titans and Cam Ward. Do I think that the Titans are going to draft Cam Ward? Yes. Do I think they want to draft Cam Ward? Yes. Do I think that they are being honest? They don't want to finalize that decision now? I think there's a real chance because we're talking on Thursday. Friday is Shedeur Sanders' pro day workout. They have more visits they're going to do. They might be able to have more visits with someone like a Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, all of that. And so why would you finalize your decision when you know that in the next couple days, now 1 day from now, we are going to have new data points? It's just, why don't you confirm it a little more, especially since you're not on the board until the end of the month? So it's not that I think that everything is going to change. I think they're saying that Mike Morganzi, their new general manager, believes in the process, and the process is not done. And especially that Friday Colorado Pro Day is a key part of that collection.
So let's stay with that analogy, though. Let's stay with that analogy for a second, because I would argue that what's happening right now is Morganzi is a month away from having to pop the question, and he's still on the app swiping. Like, that's the difference here. Like, he's still looking around and he's like, well, maybe I want to date. Maybe I should go out on a date with her. Maybe I should go out on a date with her. Like, I'm not quite sure
Travis
exactly.
Hunter get a rose.
Like,
that's what we're talking about.
So, because the question I've been asked repeatedly that I don't have an answer for is, if you're taking a quarterback first overall that you believe is going to turn your entire franchise around, shouldn't you be in love the way that, you know, Jaden Daniels, the Washington football team was not, the Commanders were not even listening. You couldn't offer them anything to even listen. The Bears weren't listening. The Patriots weren't listening. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow not listening. Like, when we look at the quarterbacks that have been drafted high, there's been an aggressiveness to go get that guy and say, hey, I'm not even going to listen to your calls. Like, the Texans were clear they wanted CJ Stroud. And they're clear that they wanted to move up in that draft to make sure that at 2 and 3, they got generational players. That's what we expect, I think, sometimes from a first overall pick. Does it not speak to the fact that Cam Ward isn't necessarily lauded the way other first overall picks are, that there's still at least like somebody sliding in their DMs and they're like, well, I just check out the pictures. Like, it feels a little weird to me.
I love this.
No, I've got more on this. I once had someone tell me that their belief of like if someone is your soulmate or not is kind of like this 5-tiered thing of like 5 are the people you're most going to be aligned with. It's going to be great. Like, absolutely go marry them. 4, you can make it work. It's going to take a little more. You're not quite as aligned, and so on and so forth. I think the Bears viewed Caleb Williams as tier 5 of that soulmate. Like, look at what he can do. Look at the skills. He is the guy we want, and we are so lucky that at the time we are looking for someone, he is there. I don't think tier 5 exists in this class, especially at quarterback. And so then you have to understand, if you're looking at Cam Ward, if you're looking at Shedeur Sanders, if you're looking at Jackson Dart, well, if you're going to get 3 or 4, and it's going to take a little more to make it work, you're going to need a little more offensive lineman, you're going to need a receiver who's able to catch it when it's not quite on target, et cetera, et cetera. Are you as comfortable? And so they might want that guy, but I don't think any of us think that Cam Ward is Caleb Williams at this stage in his career. I'll also say that the same way that marriages don't always work out, and again, hopefully mine and all of ours do, I will also say that a lot of people are like so sold on a Caleb Williams or a Trevor Lawrence, and then it doesn't work out. We have so many busts. It's such an inexact science because they're basically trying to apply this analytical approach to humans, which sometimes defy analytics and are not always rational. And so I would say that Caleb Williams felt like a more obvious pick for the Chicago Bears than Cam Ward does for the Tennessee Titans. And some people would say, no, I want to wait another year. I don't want to get married yet because I think that there is someone else with the ding. So, yeah.
But I think this whole thing to me feels like, well, we're together and I need a quarterback and you need a team. Like, I don't think that works. That's my biggest fear in all this. Like, if we look back to the last several years of quarterbacks drafted in the first round, even Bryce Young, for the up and downs of it, like Carolina believed in Bryce Young enough to go up and get Bryce Young. Like the Bengals believed again in Joe Burrow. Like, when's the last time we had a quarterback that was, the Chargers believed in Justin Herbert? Even look back at the guys that we've seen last year. Everybody believed so much in their guy. Atlanta believed in Michael Penix Jr. to that level. Yes, Trevor Lawrence hasn't exactly worked out to the level we thought. But man, the Jags believed in him so much you couldn't have called them for anything. I'm trying to remember the last time, what was that? Like, it feels like Kenny Pickett. It was the last time we had a first-round quarterback that was like, I think we might fall it. Like, we're going to be fine. All of the data points aligned. This is going to be fine. We love each other. It's going to work out. It did not work out. Like, I'm trying to find an example of a tier 3, because that's in your tier system, which I like. This feels like a tier 3 love. And if it's a tier 3 love, when's the last time tier 3 love worked out at the quarterback position? I don't know.
I will say, like, I like Jori's explanation of this, of how the Titans are going about this very pragmatically. We don't need to speak of this all as far as getting married and romance, because this is business.
Frank's engaged too, by the way.
He's like, I'm not romantic. I just also proposed.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. We're gonna have a joint wedding still, Jory. It's gonna happen.
Yeah. And Fitz is officiating.
I'll play you both down the aisle. I'll bring a violin. I'll take care of both of you at once.
Fitz could be our music.
I'll be the music.
Wow, we are looking for music right now. Carry on.
But I think that Jory's explanation that, look, there's a new GM, newish coach. They want to go about it in a certain way and not go to the altar right away on April 1st. And I get that.
Don't go to the altar on April 1st. That sounds like a terrible idea. No one will believe you.
We all know where this is headed. I've been updating the odds just about every show. Right now, BetMGM, Cam Ward to go number 1 in the NFL draft is minus 3,000. You got to bet $3,000 to win 100, which puts the implied probability at about like 97, 98%. So we know where this is headed, but I actually, after Jory explained it, I like that, that explanation to say the Titans just want to check every box. We're fine. We don't need to make a draft pick on April 3rd.
They also can't make a draft pick right now.
Right. We don't need to tell the world we love Cam Ward, because we'll tell them that on April 25th or whenever the first round is. Like, so I get that. And I don't think this necessarily means they don't love Cam Ward. They're just like, what's the point? But we don't need to tell you this. We're going to make a pick in 3 weeks. We're going to tell you then how much we really love this player and how much we have through the whole process. So I don't know necessarily that this tells me the Titans are a tier 3. It just tells me that this is the way, hey, we're building a program here. I'm a new GM, newish coach. This is the way we're going to go about our draft.
So let me ask you this. 2-part question for each of you. Do you believe Cam Ward will be the first overall pick as we stand today? And do you believe that it will be the Tennessee Titans picking him first overall, Jory?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Frank?
No doubt. I'd be on BetMGM right now betting the other side. Minus 3,000. Come on, Fitz. You're a damn.
Yeah.
You know what minus.
You also have to remember that, like, in terms of who else would want them, no one's ever traded up from number 2 to number 1. I don't think the Browns are. I don't think the Giants are. Like, it doesn't make sense for someone to come after them, and it doesn't make sense for the Titans to give away this pick, and they need a quarterback, as we've discussed.
Yeah, that's the thing, too. I mean, I don't think the Titans can trade it unless you just got such a ridiculous offer, which nobody's making for Cam Ward, because the Titans have done nothing at quarterback. Like, they don't have a Russell Wilson. They don't have a fallback. Like, that's been the alarm going off the whole offseason, that the Titans have done nothing at quarterback.
Neither of the Browns, Frank. So, like, what do we make of this? Like, the Browns say we'll probably skew young. This is what Andrew Berry, their GM, said. To be quite frank, that's probably more appropriate relative to our long-term goals, which I'm sure Myles Garrett loves hearing. They've hosted private workouts for Jackson Dart.
He's going to be okay.
$40 million. I'll be on the team that's ever been created. Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe have been in for private workouts. I will remind everybody yet again, the Browns own the first pick in the second round of the draft because multiple teams finished with the same record. So for all the conversation about picking second, the Browns are in a interesting situation where if there's a quarterback free fall or if there's a second tier quarterback they love, they're in a great situation to move up to the bottom of the first round and get that guy should they want to, or sit at the top of 2. I mean, we've seen Jalen Hurts and Derek Carr as great examples of guys that were available in the second round that turned out to have obviously long careers. So, the Browns have options, Jory. What do we make of it?
Yeah, I think what's fascinating is going back to the analogy of like 1 to 5, how compatible are you? Let's say Caleb Williams was 5 and Cam Ward is 4. If you think Shedeur is 2.7, you probably shouldn't take him number 2 overall. And I'm not trying to bash Shedeur. I'm just saying, like, some guys have different elements, and no one is saying that this is the strongest quarterback class. And so when you look at what the Browns need to decide, if I were them, the framework I would be using is, if I take a quarterback top 5, there's going to be the pressure for them to start right away. That's going to be the expectation. Do I think that quarterback without a chance to develop is going to be better than one of the next tier of quarterbacks, the Jackson Dart, the Jalen Milroe, Tyler Tuck, all of those, if I give them time? Because I do think that some quarterbacks are going to be better with time. And so there is this element of the pressure that you can take off. And I think the Browns and Giants should both be thinking about this, is if they feel like one of these guys with a year in the system, a year to understand what's going on, a year to adapt to the pro level, or even 10 games, whatever it is, can be what Shedeur Sanders can be right away, and then over the long haul, they think that they'll be able to outpace someone like Shedeur, then you should take Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, one of the other generational talents that can help you build your team, and then get the quarterback to be a different role in that.
And I've changed my mind on the second pick. This whole time, I'm like, come on, the Browns have to draft a quarterback. Shedeur Sanders is good. I like Shedeur. I do. Maybe just being exposed to him a lot here in Colorado. But I think that, you read some of the tea leaves coming out of what the Browns are saying, especially Jimmy Haslam the other day, saying stuff like, well, we're not going to force it at quarterback. And, we're going to take the best player, blah, blah, blah. And they've been saying that all along. So I don't know that points me to, oh yeah, they're drafting Shedeur Sanders. And I think maybe the Browns are to the point of, hey, we don't love this quarterback. Like you said, Jori, we don't love this quarterback. So, but Abdul Carter is maybe a generational pass rusher. And Fitz, you've talked about this of almost, the quarterback on his rookie deal. Him and Myles Garrett would be unbelievable together. And Fitz has talked about, quarterback on his rookie deal is such a big deal. An edge rusher on his rookie deal is kind of becoming a big deal with these guys making 35, 40 million a year. So why not just say, you know what, Abdul Carter's going to be a great player. Kenny Pickett can figure it out for a year, and we're not a quarterback away from beating the Baltimore Ravens for the division right now. So I've come around, and I think they're going to draft Abdul Carter second.
I don't believe either the Giants or the Browns are going to contend this year. But I think the difference between the Browns and the Giants is the Browns are not on this win now in 2025 mandate in the way that the Giants are. If Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, the Giants head coach and general manager, want to keep their jobs, I believe they need to show market improvement this year. I do not believe that's what the Haslams are looking for out of this Stefanski and Andrew Berry. I think that, it'd be great if you win now. It'd be great if you win the Super Bowl this year and prove me wrong. I will be happy to say I was wrong. But I think more so they want to build it. And we saw Jimmy and Dee Haslam come out this week. I believe y'all talked about it on the earlier episode this week and say, swing and a miss on Deshaun Watson. We made a mistake. We tried something. It didn't work. Well, when you as an owner are willing to acknowledge that, which I feel like I can count on one hand the number of times team owners in the NFL have come out and acknowledged that they did something wrong and it was their responsibility, but that's another story. When you're acknowledging that, you're not saying, and I expect you to clean up the mistake and completely rebuild and retool and win this year. You're saying, okay, let's reset. Charles Robinson, our colleague, is like the master of every possible thesaurus option for rebuild. Retool, reset, regroup, all the things. You don't have to call it a rebuild if you don't want to call it. But when Andrew Berry says that's more appropriate to our longer term goals, he is telling you 2025 is not what we're most concerned about. And when he's saying we'll probably skew young, to me, the most interesting thing about that is everyone keeps saying, oh, they're going to get Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is not young, and he's not skewing young. And I'm not saying that Kirk Cousins doesn't give them the best chance to win more games in 2025, but my point is to give up what they would need to give up for Kirk Cousins when they're already paying Deshaun Watson a lot of money over the next couple of years is not what they need to do to reset their franchise trajectory.
To that end, Jori, I genuinely believe any of the quarterbacks we're talking about in this year's draft would be so much better if they didn't have to play year one, if they just had the chance to develop. And that includes Cam Ward. And so if you tell me that Shedeur or Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart or Quinn Ewers, I don't care. I don't care which quarterback you're telling me. You tell me they go to Kevin Stefanski and they get a couple of years to develop where there's no pressure on anything other than just become the best quarterback you can. I love that. Frankly, if they were going to Daboll in New York without any expectation of what they could do on the field this year and getting the chance to develop the way Josh Allen did under Daboll, I'd feel so much more comfortable. Like, I think, weirdly, as obsessed as we are with this quarterback class, all of these quarterbacks have a real chance to succeed if they go to one of these teams that will allow them to just slow and low it. Like, I just think that's the best path here. So, frankly, what scares me about the Browns is because they didn't address the position any other way, my fear is that they draft Shedeur or they trade up and they draft Jackson Dart or whatever it's going to look like. They draft one of these guys and they throw him to the Wolves because Kenny Pickett sucks. And now all of a sudden, you've destroyed the career of another player because you didn't address the position. That's what makes me uncomfortable about it. And the Giants make me uncomfortable because I think you're right, Jory. The expectation is win now. So when Russell isn't doing that, they're going to turn around and say, well, let's put the young kid in and energize the fan base while the young kid gets killed. And it just absolutely changes the trajectory for these young players.
Do you know who fits for Shedeur the best? I've had this epiphany the past few days. A team that has a veteran that they don't really love, but don't need to play right away. A team that needs something to sell for hope, and a brand new offensive coach who kind of fits what the quarterback skill set is in his own mind is the New Orleans Saints. I think the Saints at 9 are right on time for Shedeur Sanders. It's not too high in the draft. And think about Kellen Moore, their new head coach.
Yeah.
He succeeded at Boise State, had an awesome college career at Boise State. And what do we say about Kellen Moore? He doesn't have the biggest arm. He's not the best athlete, but he's the smartest guy in the field, and he can do this and that. I think Shedeur Sanders is a very smart, productive quarterback.
I love
very accurate. And he doesn't have to play right away because Derek Carr plays right away. They don't really love him, but hey, go play 12 games, Derek. We'll give Shedeur the last 5. I've come around to thinking that the Saints are the absolute perfect landing spot for Shedeur Sanders.
I think that's great, Frank. And I also think that as interesting as a city as New Orleans is, and I love it, it's got a lot of charm, it's not the biggest media market. And so there's not going to be the same degree of pressure on him as if he goes to New York or some of these other teams. I think that a lot of things can fly under the radar from an NFL standpoint if you're in New Orleans. But Fitz, I think what you're saying is so right. And there's a part of me that would almost, like, if I were a general manager, not want to draft a quarterback super high, like top 5. And that's because I've recently become like obsessed with, are we setting ourselves up for success? Are we setting ourselves up for failure? Like, let's think honestly about the most likely outcome of the decision we're making right now, whether that's at Yahoo, whether that's in all sorts of elements of my life. And so I just think that sadly, history tells us a top 5 quarterback often doesn't succeed, especially at their first team. And so maybe if you don't have that pressure, you're more set up to succeed.
Especially when we're talking about the top, and Frank, I love your New Orleans pick on that. Like, I'm now going to be infatuated with that the way I'm infatuated with the concept of Jackson Dart to the Rams. I feel like Jackson Dart learning NFL offensive schemes from Sean McVay just feels like quarterback glory to me. It feels great. I think, Jori, the other part of it that we forget sometimes, when you draft a quarterback in the top 10 and it doesn't work, we always obsess over the quarterback. I want to obsess a little bit over the piece you didn't add to your team because you reached a quarterback. And so, like, this year, if you're not at it, like if Abdul Carter turns out to be the talent we think he is, or Travis Hunter, or any one of these 3 offensive linemen that if you guys haven't listened to Football 301, go listen. A couple of weeks ago, Nate Tice's dad, Mike Tice, came on with him and broke down offensive linemen. One of the most interesting conversations I've heard in a long time, but a real testament to the fact that there are 3 or 4 immediate day one, I'm going to plug and play this starter. Like Mason Graham's a defensive tackle from Michigan. Like, these are all names of guys that I think for the next 10 years are valuable NFL players. And so much of this is like, okay, well, you drafted the quarterback stinks, so you wasted it. It's also, you didn't draft that other piece that could have made your entire team better. And that's why you keep picking in the top 10. If you suck, it's not just that you missed on the quarterback, it's that you didn't take somebody with that pick that could be an actual value piece for you moving forward. Yeah. So, that's at least part of the conversation.
No, I think absolutely. I think the replacement cost element and also the understanding how to create success within an ecosystem. No one player, even the best player that we've ever seen, is going to have success. I mean, think about Matthew Stafford. He is one of the first overall picks who's had a great career, but even having a great career, he wasn't able to take the Detroit Lions where they wanted to go for all of those years because the team wasn't in a place where it necessarily was set up for success. He gets with Sean McVay. He gets with the talented Rams team. They go win a Super Bowl, and they're I mean, they were a few minutes away from the NFC Championship game again this year. So I think that with so many of these players ending up in the right place. And I'm not just saying like, oh, one team's better, one team's worse. Kind of what Frank was saying about Deion Sanders, about Shedeur Sanders. What's the right fit for you? Because some players are a better fit for certain offenses. Some players are a better fit for certain cultures. Like, I think when the Browns drafted Baker Mayfield, there was an element of, okay, one, if we end up we know how he can adapt to different coaches, and they had some turnover potentially. And then on the other hand, it was like, we need someone to come be brash and be like, no, Cleveland, like I got Cleveland, like I'm going to be the one who is going to represent Cleveland. They needed someone with a little bit of that personality, I guess. And so I think that understanding that fit is really important.
Yeah, and to Fitz's point about, I mean, the opportunity cost, I mean, you're sitting there 2-3, the opportunity cost is, are we really going to watch Abdul Carter wreck shop with the Giants for the next decade or for the Browns? Like, that's not very comfortable. And by the way, once you get down to number 9 in this draft, you're like, nobody really here that we're going to pass on that we really feel that strongly about, Ted McMillan or whatever. So, yeah, let's just draft Shedeur.
That Ted McMillan comp was in my mind immediately. That's a great point by you. Okay. The tush push was pushed. I don't know. I'm going to come up with more tush pushing puns, and we'll see if Jori likes them better than C-Rob did. I doubt it, but we'll break down what happened from the vote and why it happened when we come back. Welcome back. Jori, you got to witness firsthand the pushing of the tush push. I don't know. We're trying to figure out what it means. They tabled it until May. Why is it getting tabled? What's it mean for the vote? Like, what's happening?
This is going to be a little bit of a behind the scenes of how this stuff works and how this comes to be and how we go from someone wanting something changed to what actually gets changed. February 1st, Packers president Mark Murphy comes out and he's like, I don't like the tush push. It requires no skill. I'm not a fan of the play. We need this out of the game. It's almost an automatic first down and it's not football. Well, the Packers end up submitting a proposal that they want to ban the tush push. And by that, they mean if you are going to do this play when you are pushing the ball carrier, then you are going to be penalized 10 yards. So ban is kind of a little bit of a misnomer because it's more you'll get penalized for it. But obviously, if you get penalized for 10 yards, you're not getting into the end zone or you're not getting that first down, and that's unhelpful. So that all happens. And then we kind of go through a few weeks, and the proposal that ultimately comes through is to ban the tush push or to prohibit it from not drawing a penalty. But the two cited reasons are 1, player safety, and 2, pace of play. Well, you'll remember before it was, this requires no skill, not the same as player safety or pace of play. And it was funny because I was with someone this week who went up to Mark Murphy and tried to talk to him. And he's like, refer to my February 1st comments. And I wanted to be like, you probably actually don't want us to do that, Mark Murphy. Your February 1st comments are not consistent with now what's going on. So I get to league meetings this week. And previously, when people were talking about the tush push ban, I'm like, no, this is petty. Why are we doing this? Increasingly, head coaches, general managers, executives were like, well, there's a medical element, there's a health risk. And I'm like, since when? What major injury have we had from the tush push? This isn't even a play that happens that much. The Eagles and Bills have run it more in the last 3 years than all 30 other teams combined, according to ESPN research. Where is this coming from? And I think there was a concern that if you continue doing this, there could be neck injuries and other, but there wasn't the data. So I talked to Rams general manager Les Snead this week, and he told me if the data showed that there was an increased injury concern, I would vote that we need to get this out of the game and make it a penalty. I don't think that the data is there right now. And I'm like, okay. And you talk to other people who viewed that. Well, ultimately, the reason that it's tabled is because, first of all, there were people on the competition committee and throughout the league who were very uncomfortable with the fact that they felt that there was such a stigma that this was being presented specifically to like screw the Eagles essentially and to try and keep it from them having something that's such an advantage. And Packers president Mark Murphy, I think, thought like when you saw what happened in the Eagles-Commanders NFC Championship game where they kept going so many times and the Commanders kept jumping off sides trying to stop it, that the ref did say, we're going to give him an automatic touchdown if you jump off sides again, that there was going to be enough belief that that's not what they want seen in the playoffs, and so it would get through. But ultimately, the health and safety argument is another one. So what I expect to happen at the May League meetings, this is May 20th and 21st in Minneapolis, about 6 weeks away, is that there is going to be some behind-the-scenes conversation that says, we're not going to specifically ban this play and only this play. But there was a rule in the NFL rulebook, 2004 is when it was changed. So the pre-2004 rule that prohibited the pushing or pulling of the runner at all because of the safety concerns. Well, why did this change? This changed because they felt like they no longer could officiate it in a way that was consistent, and it was too hard to understand what was going on. And so even though there was a safety concern, there was an officiating concern. Well, now, agree or disagree, there are some in the league office who believe that officiating has come a long way in 20 years, both from a technology standpoint and from an understanding that they now feel like if they're going to try to get to 18 games, if they're going to try and have every team playing an international game a year, if they're going to increase it, they need to try and eliminate the chances of injuries to get more players healthy at the end of the season. And that is more important to them than the potential ambiguity in the officiating. And so I expect in May it to pass, but it's not going to be a narrow tush-push ban that's passing. It is going to be a reversal to the pre-2004 rule that eliminates pushing or pulling the ball carrier, which would include the tush-push.
So does that mean when a running back is sitting on the field and everybody just crams onto him and he gets another 6 yards, like that play's gone?
I do believe that would be something that is no longer legal. The bigger question to me is, do I think the new rule or the new /old rule will prohibit that? Yes. Do I understand how it's going to be enforced and how they're going to do it in the first year? Again, remember hip drop tackle this past year when they wanted to litigate it out of the game because of the safety element. They kind of said, okay, for the first year, we're not going to flag it, but we'll fine you afterwards. So we're not constantly interrupting, which, by the way, if you're claiming that pace of play is one of the reasons you're concerned about this, then that is an element. And so I think that will be prohibited this year, but I'm not quite sure how often they will enforce it and stop the game for it.
Yeah, the NFL perked up. They're like, can we fine guys for this? Because goodness knows, the NFL, find something in life you love as much as the NFL fining players 5 figures for absolutely nothing.
Oh, dang, guys. The Patriots are trading Joe Milton to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I had the breaking news. I was just letting you finish. I was letting you finish, Jori. Yeah, the breaking news, the Patriots trading Joe Milton and a 7th-round pick to the Cowboys in exchange for Dallas's compensatory 5th-round pick per sources. That's according to Adam Schefter.
It? That's all they got out of that.
A compensatory 5th-round pick. Like an extra, here you go for losing some free agents all of a sudden.
Didn't they draft Joe Milton in the 5th round?
I don't remember where they drafted him.
Goodness. Wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Why give him up at that point? Like, just see it through. You're not paying him anything. Like,
that's the part of it.
Like 5th to 7th. Wow.
I think what stuns me here is why get rid of him. I mean, if you're the Patriots organization, why are you looking to get? This is why C-Rob said a couple weeks ago, like, there's no way it's going to happen. They don't really need to get rid of him. He cost them nothing. So you just got rid of a guy that cost you nothing for a 5th-round
7th draft pick swap. That's weird to me. I mean, again, Joe Milton was a 6th-round pick. I just looked it up. Why? What's the point? You're really that excited about your last pick of the 5th round? I don't. And
like, if Joe Milton comes out this preseason and crushes it,
what's the point for the Patriots? I think
it's great value for the Cowboys.
This is a heist for the Cowboys. Even if Joe Milton never plays a game for them, who cares? You swapped a 5th and 7th round pick.
If Milton turns around and has a great preseason and then gets benched behind Drake May, he would have more value. Like, if you turn around and just give him 3 games of the preseason to crush, 2 games of the preseason to crush, like, people are going to.
What if Drake May gets hurt? Like, backup quarterback, that for the same reasons, Jori, you talked about the Atlanta Falcons not necessarily giving away Kirk Cousins. The same thing applies to the Patriots. If you have a really talented backup, there's value in that. And again,
whether or not he plays for the Cowboys, think about what the Patriots did with Jimmy Garoppolo. You want to be able to have these guys developed. And I mean, Mike McCarthy, that was a big thing when he was the Cowboys coach, is he's like, I want to draft a quarterback every year because whether they play for you or someone else, it's an asset worth having.
Josh Dobbs, currently the backup for the Patriots. So you would be in Dobbs we trust.
I don't understand it. It's just strange.
I don't want to lose the fact that this seems like a really strong move for the Cowboys. Like, look, I mean, not for nothing, everybody fell in love with Joe Milton last year from, limited snaps. If you're the Cowboys, you brought Trey Lance in. That obviously didn't show you anything that you really cared about. Now you bring in Joe Milton. At least it feels like they're trying to constantly create, a better quarterback room. I'm not going to sit here and say that Joe Milton's about to compete with Dak. Let's not get it twisted, especially Dak financially is not going anywhere. But this seems like a smart move by the Cowboys to go get yourself a backup you can develop, and maybe in a few years it is somebody you want to take a look at.
Yeah, I don't think at any point we're going to be like, wow, the Cowboys really missed out on that last pick of the 5th round, didn't they? Like, it's a no-cost thing for the Cowboys, so good for them.
Yeah, my biggest question will be what's the plan for developing Joe Milton and trying to get him to be a little more refined? That's what I want to know. Because he's totally different than Cooper Rush.
He's an exciting prospect. Like, I mean, I don't know if he's ever going to amount to a great NFL starter, but you look at the skills and he's what the Colts thought they were getting with Anthony Richardson. Like, right? Like, this is,
right.
It should have been 4 rounds later for the Colts getting Anthony Richardson. But I mean, this is a guy who you look, you're like, arm is just through the roof. Like, he throws the ball like very, very few humans have ever thrown it. Let's be honest. And he's big and he can run. And he's just a very exciting prospect. And to get him for basically nothing, kudos to the Cowboys, who have overpaid for Jonathan Mingo, who overpaid for Trey Lance. They didn't overpay here. This is a steal. Like,
the Cowboys don't even have Will Grier is the current backup for the Cowboys, so they have no real backup plan. They get themselves a backup plan.
Put some respect on Will Grier's name. Love that guy.
I put the appropriate amount of respect, I think, on Will Grier's name right there.
Can I tell you, when Will Grier got traded to the Cowboys or whatever, they acquired him in training camp a few years ago. I was like walking into a doctor's appointment, straight up wrote the article on my phone in the garage of the doctor's office. And I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just knock this out. That was like my most read story that month. I don't know why people were so excited about it. But I'm just saying, for some reason, people were more excited about that than like me getting a one-on-one with Dak that month.
Because nobody's more popular than the backup quarterback in Dallas. Like, they just... All right. So that's a heck of a way to. By the way, I give that grade an A+ for the Cowboys. I give that grade an F for the Patriots. I don't understand it at all. Like, I don't care about your 5th round draft pick that you get. I don't understand getting rid of a talented quarterback.
And you get a 7th back
right now,
too, right?
Yeah.
Like, you said that correctly. They get a 7th back. Like,
yeah, Milton in a 7th for the 5th.
But
I mean, I think probably more
senior
to you, because I also think that keeping players around who a previous coaching staff liked, who your staff does not like, is not setting you up for success or setting you up to feel like you're having the right culture there. And I'm not saying that like Joe Milton's not a culture fit. I'm just saying there are so many guys who get drafted with a vision from a coaching staff, and then the staff's not there anymore, and it's not really in anyone's best interest to keep it going. So
fair point. Vrabel certainly is like, Vrabel may have a trick up his sleeve. Let's just wait and see if Ryan Tannehill ends up there as the backup. I don't know. I'm just making things up at this point. Okay, follow us on social media. You know what to do. Look for all of our names, except for Frank, because he's at Yahoo Schwab. It takes a dream team to make this thing happen. We really appreciate everybody behind the scenes. Rate, review, subscribe if you listen this far. We appreciate it so much. And look, the chaos isn't going anywhere. So we're going to continue bringing you every single week new stuff as we get more breakdowns from Jori. Travel safe back from Florida. We feel your pain for the sunburn that I still think you should have. Like, if you don't come back with the sunburn,
I've been putting sunscreen on every day
to sit in a dark room. I mean, this is.
I know. No, literally every day. I'm like, why did I put that on and then go sit in this dark hallway?
Frank, we'll just start manifesting you and I walking around in Speedo at the owners' meetings next year. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend, everybody.